Jack Catterall versus Harlem Eubank. The fight gets stopped early, eventually. We've also got the debut of highly rated prospect Leo Atang. Pat Brown continues his demolition of anyone that gets in the ring with him. We've also got AQIB Fiaz and the return of Joe Cordina. So let's get straight into it. Bubba boxing fans. Welcome back to another installment of Chatter Boxing, your favorite show on YouTube that kind of sounds like shadow boxing. As always, I'm your host, AB. How are we doing? I hope we're well. We're always lucky when we get to chat boxing. Let's get straight into it, starting off with Leo Atang, the highly rated 18-year-old British heavyweight prospect signed to Matchroom, of course. He made his pro debut. He looks good. As always with these first couple of fights, it's very hard to assess because it's hard to assess the level of the opposition, really. But he did look good. First of all, he's quite big. I believe he's 6'5" or 6'6". He's only 18 years old, so he still has room to grow. He still needs to pick up that so-called adult strength. But he does look good. He looks sharp in there. He looks like he's got a lot of good movement, quick reflexes, sharp movements as well. So it will be interesting to see him as he goes on. Early predictions, maybe in 5, 6, 7 years' time, we'll see him against Moses Atama. That would be interesting, but who knows? Future looks bright for him. Not much we can say about that. Likewise with Pat Brown. Anyone who's watched our previous episodes knows we're fans of Pat Brown. He looks scary, man. He looks scary. He demolishes another opponent. This time it was fellow Arsenal fan Lewis Oakford. Again, hard to assess because of the level of opposition, although Lewis Oakford was a good step up. I believe his record was 8-2. But Pat Brown, he just does another demolition job, man. And what I liked about this fight is in the first round, Pat Brown smelt blood. And that was it. He smelt blood and he went for the kill. He literally had Oakford in the corner for the last 20 seconds or so of the fight. And Oakford just couldn't get out of the corner. And that's it. You know, once Pat Brown has you in the corner, it's only going to go one way. Referee stops the fight, rightfully so, because as we just said, it was only going to go one way. And Pat Brown continues his ascent. Respect for him. You know, he had a fight 2 weeks ago on the Galaliafai Rodriguez undercard. So respect to him for staying active. I believe that's the way to go. Up next, we've got AQIB Fiaz versus Alex Murphy. This was an interesting fight. Both fighters had identical records, 13-1, and the build-up was quite nice and spicy as well. In the press conference, Alex Murphy was alluding to the fact that he felt AQIB Fiaz was ducking him when he took the fight with Gomez, which was originally scheduled to be against Gomez. He was like, AQIB Fiaz didn't want that smoke, basically, went for Gomez. Gomez pulled out. So now Alex Murphy steps up on short notice. AQIB Fiaz didn't take that too kindly. He gave him a little bit of a choke, got his hands on his neck in the face-off, which we like to see as long as within reason, but that bit of spiciness gave a nice little tinge to the fight. It was a good fight. It was a close fight. Personally, I had AQIB Fiaz up by 1 round. Some rounds were close, so I could have also given it a draw, to be honest. I could have given it a draw. What impressed me about AQIB Fiaz in this fight, especially the first half of the fight, so I thought Alex Murphy just nicked the first round. It was very close, and AQIB Fiaz ended the round strong, but I give the first round to Alex Murphy. Then I gave rounds 2 and 3 to AQIB Fiaz, and what I liked there was his pace management early on in the fight. He wasn't doing too much in rounds 1, 2, 3, but you could see he had that internal clock. When it went to like 30, 20 seconds left in the round, boom, suddenly he picked up the pace, started unloading combinations. And in my opinion, he was able to nick the rounds. You know, according to my scorecard, he was nicking those rounds. Some things, though, I wasn't too impressed with AQIB Fiaz, especially someone with such a decorated amateur background. I feel like he needs to work a bit more. I know that's contradictory because I just said I liked how he was managing the pace of the earlier rounds and turning it on towards the end. That being said, I still think he needed to work more, especially in the second half of the fight. Sometimes he would cut the distance and just stop. Like, he'd be in front of Alex Murphy and not really throw. I guess he's conserving energy. But whenever he did throw those combinations, you saw lightning fast combinations, fast hands. he was hurting Murphy there with his power. So I just didn't understand, especially towards the end of the fight, why he wasn't as active as he could have been. He had the pedigree and he had the speed to kind of make it not as close, but he was just choosing not to throw as much. I do have to say though, does he lack the power? Because at times he was catching Murphy flush with some good combinations. And although they were doing damage, you never really saw Murphy hurt too much. So I just wonder if AQIB Fiaz lacks a bit of the power. I'm not too sure what it is. Is it the fitness? He didn't look like 100% in tip-top shape to me. He looked like he was 90% tip-top shape, especially some of the slow motion replays. You could see he was maybe carrying a little bit of extra weight. That could just be me like reaching my own conclusion, given that I thought he could have been working more. Like I said, he threw some good combinations in there, but then he just stopped. He'd close the distance, but then he just stopped. What surprised me was a unanimous decision. Although I guess, if I did score it as a win for Fiaz, then I guess all three judges did. But yeah, I had it 96, 94, maybe 95, 95. There was one scorecard that was quite wide. I believe it was 97, 92. I think that was quite wide. But like I said, the unanimous decision surprised me. Hopefully, AQIB Fiaz can keep up this good momentum that he's just built for this fight. And hopefully he can continue improving, because like I said, he was a very decorated amateur and very highly rated when he first burst into the scene as a pro. It's kind of slowed down there, but now he's got the momentum back up. Let's see what he can do from here. Up next, we've got the return of Joe Cordina against a Mexican by the name of Gonzalez Quiros. Very good to see Joe Cordina back, man. We haven't seen him back since his loss to Kakachi in Riyadh around 14 months ago, which was a bit of a surprise for him to be inactive for that long. But I mean, fair enough. If he wants to take a break, he can. He's already achieved quite a lot in the sport. And Cordina looked good, I must say. Definitely looks bigger. Definitely looks stronger in there. Still got excellent fundamentals, solid skill set. He does look sharp. He's got a varied skill set. But this was actually a very good fight. As we all know, Mexicans are very, very game. And they were saying this in the Proper Boxing podcast, previewing the fight. They're like, be careful of these random Mexicans. Be careful. We've seen it time and time again. Josh Warrington. We've seen it against Lee Wood. We've seen it against countless lighter-weight British boxers that bring on, or Eddie Hearn, brings on a boxer from Mexico who's actually extremely game. And they upset the apple cart, so to speak, and they rewrite the script. That almost happened here. I wouldn't say almost happened here, because Cordina never looked like he was going to lose the fight. But his opponent was tough, I must say. For someone coming back from a 14-month layoff like Cordina did, I was surprised at the quality of opposition, man. Eddie Hearn needs to be careful. Although I'm a big fan of Eddie Hearn. I think he's a great promoter. But yeah, these tough Mexican fighters, man, they can be a banana skin. We do have to question, though, does Cordina have the power? Again, he moved back up in weight. He's much more comfortable in this weight class, according to, the commentary and Joe Cordina's camp. But his opponent, Gonzalez Quiros, this was his first 10-rounder. And when you go into the deep waters, you'd expect the class and the experience and the power of Joe Cordina to really stand out and maybe give this guy problems. And we didn't see that as much as we'd like. Again, it's just me being overly critical, perhaps, because like I said, I thought Joe Cordina was a worthy winner. But to be blown away, I would like to see him, deal with an opponent like that a bit easier, especially one who is making his first 10-round fight. It was his first 10-round fight all the way in the UK. You maybe would have thought he'd have got him out of there easier or just totally dominated. That being said, it was a good performance by Joe Cordina. He's back. He's really got to push on from here now. He can't be taking long breaks. Who does he fight next? Honestly, that's a stacked division. There's a lot of options. I would like to see him against Andy Cruz, man. I would like to see him against Andy Cruz. They've both got that Olympic background. They've both got that amateur background. And I would like it. They've both got nice skill set. They've both got nice speed. Andy Cruz is picking up his power. Who knows? Maybe they're both under the Matchroom banner, so maybe that's one that can be made in the future. One other thing I will add, we did see Joe Cordina has a good chin, I must say. In the 7th round, he got clipped with quite a hard shot. by Gonzalez, and he seemed to take it well. If he's going to fight Andy Cruz, we're going to need to see that good chin. Now, before we move on to the main event, it's a friendly reminder to give us a like, a comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend about Chatterboxing. Let them know there's a show on YouTube where we chat boxing. We do as we say on the tin. Moving on to the main event, we had former undisputed champion of the world, Jack El Gato Catterall. See what I did there? Jack the Cat Catterall versus Harlem Eubank. Harlem Eubank, of course, the first cousin of Chris Eubank Jr., thus making him the nephew of Chris Eubank Sr. To be fair, I was expecting Junior or Senior, at least one of them, to be there. Surprisingly, I didn't see them. Maybe I missed it, but I definitely didn't see them. We did see Chris Eubank's sister, though. She's the fiancée of Frank Smith, or maybe she's his wife. And we saw her there ringside next to Frank Smith. So she was in attendance. Anyways, kind of a boring fight, to be fair. A lot of people I spoke to said they were disappointed by the fight. Shout out to Anthony. Even some of the DAZN analysts were saying it was a disappointing fight. I agree, it was a bit boring. I kind of blame Harlem Eubank more for that than for Jack Catterall. Look, I do like Jack Catterall's style. I understand it's a bit boring, but for the purists, I do like it, especially back in the day. Like Catterall against Taylor 1. Oof, beautiful boxing. Even against Regis Prograis, like beautiful boxing. I really do love that slickness. I really do love his ring control, his range control, his distance, his ring IQ. It's very, very good. I know not everyone likes that style, but there are things to be appreciated with that style. And we can see, like, he was giving Harlem Eubank problems, especially like the first 4 or 5 rounds. He was giving Harlem Eubank serious problems, and he was making Harlem Eubank look so ordinary. So ordinary. And it was all down to his management of the distance and of the ring control and of the range, you know. He would always just stay out of Harlem Eubank's distance just by a little bit. And the result would be Harlem Eubank would then like rush in and stumble in, and Jack Catterall would just take another half a step back or another step back, and boom, Harlem Eubank suddenly looked like he was stumbling all over the place, or it looks like he's just rushing in without a game plan. And it's not that Harlem Eubank didn't know what he was doing, or he's not a good boxer. He is. It's just that when you have such good ring control and when you can manage the distance that well, you can make your opponent look ordinary. And I think that's what Jack Catterall was doing, in my opinion. If you watch it back, the way he controls that distance, takes a step back, means Harlem Eubank stumbles in, comes in, he looks a bit, messy and unorganized doing it. And eventually Harlem Eubank was getting frustrated, and you could see it. And the more Harlem Eubank was getting frustrated, the more he'd rush in, the more like unserious he would look, and the more, let's say, boring the fight would be, because Eubank would rush in, he'd stumble in, he'd not hit anything, and then they'd eventually end up clinching. And that gave the fight its kind of boring pace and boring theme. And I do agree, but like I said, there are things to appreciate in the sweet science of Jack Catterall's boxing, and the way he controls that range, I think, was quite impressive. I think Eubank, because of how frustrating it was to fight someone like Jack Catterall, he was barely touching him throughout those rounds. I think he was giving it all when there was a clinch. Anytime there was a clinch, and there was quite a few clinches, Harlem Eubank was trying to put as much weight as he could, hold Jack as tight as he could, do anything to kind of slow him down and just get his pace down a little bit to something where Eubank can find success with, slow him down a bit, so when Eubank does rush in, he might catch him once or twice. And we even saw, in the clinches, they end up throwing each other around the ring. Such was the frustration, I believe. Didn't look the prettiest of fights. It wasn't necessarily good on the optics, but in my opinion, you have to give Jack the Cat credit, because he did that to the fight. He did do that to the fight. In my opinion, Catterall, he was dictating the rhythm and the pace of the fight from round 1. Like, from the very beginning, I thought he was not too troubled in there. The 3 people that they had scoring on the zone, the boxers they had scoring on the side, I think after round 4, they had it 2-all, which I found crazy. Like, I just didn't agree with that. Like, 2-all, why? Like, did Harlem Eubank land anything on Jack? I don't know. I was a bit surprised. But I had Jack comfortably up on the scorecards. when it was stopped, when it was called early. Eubank did look, he did have sharp movement in there. He was moving, he was switching stances, he'd move back. He was doing like a lot of those like slick shoulder and head rolls and getting his head off the line, and he was looking very sharp and slick with it. But it looked like he's doing it when it's not really necessary. And again, it's not that he's a poor boxer. That's what Jack Catterall was doing to him. He was going in and out and controlling the range in such a way that at times Eubank would step in and not really know what's coming next. So he just rely on, moving his head off the line and like switching stance. I also did like how Jack would sometimes he'd come in. He is a box off the back foot fighter. Sometimes we'd see him come in with a nice rear uppercut. I quite like that, to be honest. And one criticism I'd have of Eubank, it seemed to me, again, this could be totally unfair. I don't mean to discredit him. I know he's a consummate professional. He is a good boxer. I'm just being critical here because that's what we do here on Chatter Boxing. We're here to chat boxing. But it seemed to me at times that Harlem Eubank was happy or satisfied to just look good in there. To look good in there, to look sharp, to show off some slick moves, and put on like a good showing, let's say, and to seem that he was enjoying himself. He had a smile on his face most of the fight. I didn't quite understand that. Like, the fight's not going your way. Maybe it's because out of frustration, it's like a passive-aggressive smile. But I did get the impression that, okay, he was like rushing in to try and reach Jack. But other than that, I did get the feeling that he was just maybe happy to be in there and happy to look good. I know he lost, but maybe he's like, look, if I put a good enough performance against a very good boxer like Jack Catterall, maybe that's enough. Again, I could be doing him a disservice. But as for the post-fight comments where Eubank was like, okay, let me just rewind it a little bit. He did have some success towards the end of the fight. But again, it's not much. It's not much. And when I mean he did have some success, in the first maybe 4 or 5 rounds, he would touch Jack once, or like he'd land a punch once or twice against Catterall in those rounds, or 3 times per round, let's say. And when I mean he did find success towards the end, instead of 3 punches landing, I felt it was maybe like 5 or 6 punches landing towards the last round. So he did come on a bit, but again, not much. I totally disagreed with his comments in the ring post-fight where he's like, I was expecting to get the win. I boxed his head off. I put on such a good performance. I was catching him. I was like, really? Man, I just didn't see that. And he was calling for the rematch, and I was thinking, why? Like, the people aren't going to want to see that. It wasn't such an entertaining fight, and you didn't really do that well, to be honest. Like, why should you get the rematch? I thought it was a fair and square decision. I thought Eddie Hearn's comments were spot on. No disrespect to Harlem Eubank, but Eddie Hearn was like, Jack Catterall's moving on to like bigger and better things. And fair enough, as he should do. Lest we forget, this guy should have been undisputed world champion at one point. And that's coming from me, who's a huge Josh Taylor fan. I'm a big fan of Josh Taylor, big fan of the Tartan Tornado. But I mean, let's be real. He did lose that first fight. One more thing I will give Harlem Eubank credit for is he did land that right hand a few times. Didn't give Catterall too much trouble, but he did land it a couple of times. So where next? Where next for Jack Catterall? Do we get a rematch with Barbosa? Perhaps. I honestly was disappointed with Catterall against Barbosa. I don't think he was fully on it that night. Credit to Barbosa, though. But I feel like were there to be a rematch, Jack Catterall would give a better showing for himself. What about Shakram Giyasov, the golden boy, the very talented Uzbekistani boxer, former Olympian that's also signed to Matchroom and Eddie Hearn? I'm not sure if the general public will like that just because of both of their styles, but I wouldn't mind seeing that. But I do think that Jack Catterall does have it in him to challenge for a world title again. Will he get a world title? Remains to be seen, but he's definitely there or thereabouts, and he definitely should be in the conversation, and he definitely needs to push on from here. Now, the stoppage. What was going on with the stoppage? I mean, referee, or doctor, what was the doctor thinking? So what it looked like to me on TV, it kind of looked like to everyone, even Eddie Hearn was saying, it looked like Jack Catterall's doctor took a look at that crazy cut that he had. Honestly, like, did you see the cut in his eyebrow? If you look closely, you could see all the way to China through that thing. Honestly, it was huge. So the doctor took a look at it, took a couple looks at it. He asked Jack, like, are you okay? Jack was like, yeah, I want to continue. We could see that on the TV. And then the doctor just says, cool, like, go ahead. Like, that's madness. That's madness. What are you doing? Like, especially as a doctor. And then what it looked like to me was in the other corner, HARLEM Eubank, who also had a very bad cut, nowhere near as bad as Jack Catterall's cut. His doctor, she seemed like she stopped it based on his cut, which I think was the right decision for HARLEM Eubank. So what was Jack Catterall's doctor doing, man? Like, I understand maybe like you want to see the show go on. Maybe, I'm not sure how true this is, but maybe the doctors are told, like, give a little bit of leeway to letting the show go on where you can, as long as it doesn't put the fighter in too much risk. But crazy decision. Crazy decision. I mean, if you think about it, Catterall was going to go back out for another 3 minutes. I know, granted, Eubank wasn't landing too much, but imagine with that wide open eyebrow, your opponent targeting that for another 3 minutes. That's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. And also, I think the referee was totally okay with the doctor's decision, because when the doctor told him, cool, like, we'll continue, I think the referee went over to the other corner, and then that's when he ended up stopping it. Maybe you can say, all right, the referee's following the doctor's advice, but that's madness. That's madness. Anyone can see that that cut was horrific. There is no way to continue with that cut. There is no way. There's no way. Full credits to Catterall, showing his guts. He's like, cool, I'm going to go out again. Credit to the cut man, to be fair. He did a very good job, because it was bleeding profusely. And in about 45 seconds, he got it to stop bleeding completely. So credit to the cut man. How much would that have held up if Eubank starts targeting that and landing punches on that? I don't know. Fans were unhappy. Me as a spectator, obviously, I want the fight to go on, but it was totally the right decision to end the fight there. Those of you who saw my last episode will know that on Chatterboxing, we are no strangers to a clash of heads ourselves, but this was another level, man. Let me know what you guys think. Do you think it was the doctor that okayed it? Do you think it was the referee that stopped it based on Catterall's cut? Do you think it was the referee that stopped it based on Eubank's doctor's cut? What do you guys think? What do you guys think of Jack Catterall overall? What do you guys think of Pat Brown? All the fights we saw today, let me know in the comments. Tell a friend to tell a friend. And as always, my friends, keep those hands up.
I know you feel it. 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 I know you feel it.